And you mentioned this new one with the real estate agents, and with your real estate background, how did you guys discover it?
So it was sitting, with one of my buddies from high school who was a Keller Williams agent, and him complaining about this. It's like, man, I've got a seller, who wants to sell a home, and he doesn't want to pay the buyer side commission. And I had to tell him, I was like, look, this is just the way it is. And he said, well, listen, if you go over to Century 21 or Remax, they're going to tell you the same thing. It's just the way it is. And so that's when I went and kind of researched it, why it was that way, and realized the National Association of Realtors, who control the MLS systems in every state, in order to be a part of the MLS, these real estate agents and brokerages have to join the National Association of Realtors. And that's one of the written stipulations, is for the seller to pay buyer side commissions, which is antitrust. And so immediately when I found that out, I said, all right, this is an antitrust case. We're equipped to do it. We had some experience doing it. We filed the suit and settled it and got a settlement approval for $55 million.
Very nice, man.
It's up in appeal, 11th Circuit, but hopefully we're not too worried about the appeal.
Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. Join your host, Jonathan Hawkins, as we explore the fascinating stories of successful law firm founders. We'll uncover their beginnings, triumph over challenges, and practice growth. Whether you aspire to launch your own firm, have an entrepreneurial spirit, or are just curious about the legal business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Founding Partner Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Hawkins. This is a podcast where I get to talk to law firm founders and hear about all the cool stuff they've done, lessons learned along the way, and maybe some advice to me and others as we continue to try to grow our firms. So today's guest is a old friend of mine. I can't remember how long ago we met, but we've been on the same side of litigation, the opposite side of litigation, and just hung out in the same circles for a long time. So today's guest is Bryan Knight. He is a commercial litigator here in Atlanta at Knight Palmer. I think he'll tell me, he'll give a little more detail, but he focuses on real estate litigation, construction litigation, and business litigation. So Bryan, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, Jonathan, thanks for having me. I actually remember it's been about 20 years. It was you at Folsom Martin and then Prevalent a Horse, and we've had a bunch of cases with each other and against each other. So thanks for having me on your podcast. But like Jonathan said, my firm, Knight Palmer, I specialize in commercial litigation, construction, and real estate litigation. My law partner does a lot of class action, consumer class actions, and also insurance coverage disputes. So right now we've just hired a 10th lawyer, and like you, Jonathan, we're trying to figure things out and trying to grow right now.
We're going to dive into all that, but one thing I'll note is a lot of commercial litigators are paper pushers. You're an actual trial lawyer. You just came off of a trial, I guess last week, I think you said.
I did, out in Gwinnett Superior Court, and had a week-long jury trial with one of my associates, Lawton Jordan, and we represented a medical practice that had some construction defects, and the big thing was a Generac generator never worked properly, and we ended up suing, got a judgment for about $200,000 and a bad faith attorney fee award of $180,000. So we're pretty happy.
Not a bad day, man.
Not a bad day.
All right, so let's take me back to the beginning. I'm not sure I know this part of your story, but maybe I just don't remember, but where did you start out after law school? What kind of practice did you have?
Went to Wake Forest for law school, did summer associate stuff or summer programs at King & Spalding, big firm, and Streeter, Wheeler & Flint, which was more like a medium-sized firm, about 30 lawyers, and ended up really liking Streeter, Wheeler & Flint because they got their lawyers into the courtroom, got them in depositions, took a job offer with Streeter, Wheeler & Flint, worked exclusively with David Flint and John Christie over there. And within my first year and a half, they had me doing my first jury trial, lead counsel, and we won on a small case. And after that, I was hooked.
I tell you, man, it's the good thing of those smaller firms. They just throw you in the fire fast.
They do, and interviewing, recently we've hired an associate from Wake Forest last year. This associate's coming from UGA Law, and they always ask me, what kind of, mentoring program do you have? What am I going to do to get prepared? I said, look, you're going to get on the job experience, and do not come here if you need a mentor to hold your hand. And it kind of scares them at first, but I need, to work in my firm because I'm so busy. I need those kind of people that want to jump into it and aren't afraid to. So that's who we're looking for.
So let's talk about that. So, I mean, over the year, you've been doing your own thing. We'll get into that too, but for a long time, you've had your own firm for a long time. You've hired a lot of people over the years. What's your philosophy now in terms of straight out of law school or have some seasoning under their belt? What are you looking for nowadays?
Looking for a little bit of both. I go back to 2 hires ago. We got John Sugg, who came in when Davis, Matthews, and Quigley kind of fell apart. Ron Quigley had some medical issues. John Sugg came over as a non-equity partner who is probably a couple years younger than me and was a perfect fit. But at the same time, I'm looking for younger people to kind of for me to develop them the way I want to. So in my form, I'm looking at if you have a lot of experience, it'd be a good fit, or I'd rather just take someone out of law school. The 3rd year, it's got to be a really good fit because we're really good training. You have to come from a firm like, where you went, where you started, a Fultz Martin or a Trevlin Horst or Schuler Flint, these kind of medium-sized firms that train their lawyers really well. Got to be a good writer. You got to be not afraid to go into court and do your thing.
So take me back. I think you started the first iteration of your firm back in 2011. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so what pushed you over and said, all right, it's time to go? And I asked this question to a lot of folks. Some people, it's sort of the accidental starting, and other people are like, I always knew it. It was just a matter of when. What was it like for you?
For me, it got to the point where I had a large book of clients. I wasn't getting the return from the law firms that I was at. And I really enjoyed the business development side. But because I had so many billable hour requirements, it was very hard to do both. But really, at the time, I had a wife that worked and I had no kids. I had no risk. And so for me, it was more about this is the time to do it. And if I don't do it, I can always come back and work for somebody. And so for me, it was kind of an easy decision because I enjoyed the business development side of it. And I enjoyed, working with clients directly. So on that side, that was the motivator for me.
And so I think you formed it with a partner, right?
I did. James Johnson. He was formerly with Morris Manning, and we had cases with each other going back to the associate days, and so we were emailing each other at midnight, and then we formed a friendship, and he was kind of at the same point in his career as well. I think we were at the same year out of law school. Maybe he was a year ahead of me, but we were kind of the same place in life. He had a wife, he was married, and at work and no kids, and we just enjoyed each other. So enjoyed hanging out with each other, had the same philosophies of practice of law, loved trial work, and so we gave it a go. We started out at a Regis space over at Promenade 2 in Midtown. And we started out with one office. We were licking stamps, writing envelopes, had a copier in there with us in one office, and it was actually kind of fun back then. The overhead was super low, and we were doing our thing.
I had this conversation with somebody recently, sort of after a firm has grown for a while. You're in your spot, like the old days. They were so nice, low stakes. You didn't have all this overhead, you didn't have all this responsibility. You're like, man, maybe we should go back to that. You have those thoughts ever?
I like having staff now. I like having associates. But no, there was a part of it. It was like, this client paid this big bill this month, and it's really exciting for us. But now I don't even know what comes in and what goes out. I got to get my staff taking care of that. So there's a part of me that would love to go back to that, but there's a part of me that's gotten used to having the help, which is nice.
Yeah, so tell me about the early days. So it's you two. Did you have any help with you? Just the two of you? Did you have staff at all?
It was just us two. I was doing more of the business, kind of the management, sending out invoices, kind of handling the IT. Within 6 months, we hired our first paralegal who was luckily loved the IT stuff, loved the softwares and all that kind of stuff. And she kind of came in. She's still with us today after, almost 15 years. And so she's invaluable for us. But that was the beginning. I mean, really, we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, to be really honest with you, if I'd known that you were around back then, I would have, hired you and had you come in to help us out a little bit.
Well, I wasn't there yet, man.
No.
It's weird, and I'm curious as to your thoughts on it, if you've thought about it in a while. But when you're at an established firm that's already gone through the startup phase, it's way different. If you need something that just sort of appears, you ask for it, whatever. But when you have to build it for that first time, after you've sort of done some of the things, you never have to do them again. But the first IT setup, the first setting up the firm, all those things you have to do in the beginning just suck up a lot of time, and you don't know what you're doing. You're fumbling around.
You're right. It takes up a ton of time, and you learn stuff, right? And so we've gone through a couple iterations, and I wish I had started out with the same, invoicing system as before, because we lost a lot of information by changing over, But the only thing that stood true is we started out as Apple, and we're still Apple computers. That's about the only thing that's actually stayed. We've changed IT companies. We've grown into some different things, but you live and learn.
2011, man, that's early days for Apple, law firm Apple implementation.
It was early, but I will tell you that these apples, at least for our firm, they last a lot longer than your typical computer off the shelf. And so I've run the numbers, and we think that has definitely helped. And then the integration with phones now and everything else, and laptops, it makes it easy.
The other thing that I've just learned over the years, I'm sure you have too, after hiring a lot of people of all types, attorneys, non-attorneys, all the stuff, you realize how early on you're not very good at hiring. And part of it is you don't know what you need. Part of it is you learn what you need so then you can hire better. Part of it is you figure out what not to hire or who not to hire. What have you learned in that regard over the years?
Man, we've learned a lot. We've hired some gems and had a couple misses here and there, but I think what stands across the board, at least for me, is I'm looking for kind of hard workers, and I like people who have had jobs, before, or worked during college, or it's this work ethic. Because you're going to find smart people. But for me, it's that kind of the next step, or people who actually really kind of enjoy the law. Coming out of law school, maybe you don't know what you know or not, but I'm looking for people that actually enjoy the law. But then it's got to be in a small firm. It's got to be a good personality fit, because if you've got one that's not going to be a team player, or one a little bit off, it affects everybody else. And so I'm looking for a good personality fit. I usually like to take people out to lunch rather than just do the normal stuff, and try to really get into their personal lives. What are you doing, outside of work? What are your interests, and try to see it from the whole kind of person aspect, rather than just what are your grades, are you okay working weekends and that kind of stuff. I actually have respect for people that say, listen, I don't want to work weekends, and for me, I'm like, okay, well, why? Because I'm into mountain biking, where I've got these interests, or I like to travel. And I said, all right, well, that's kind of why I went on my own. These guys all laugh, but one of the last big wins we had, I said, rather than giving you guys bonuses, I'm going to give you trips anywhere in the world that you want to go with this X amount of dollars that you can spend, but I got to approve the trip. It's not to Mexico. It's not to the Caribbean. It's got to be a cool trip. And I'll give you the time off, and I'll take off the billable requirements for that, so you don't have to ever worry about that. And that, I think, means more to me than having just a bonus.
That's cool, man. I bet that helps with recruiting. Maybe I'll come over there.
And my lawyers will tell those stories. Is that that, and the people that we get and that we hire, put that into perspective, where it's like, work hard, play hard. If you put the time in, that we're gonna get rewarded. We're gonna, I'm gonna take, if you're into golf, or if you're into other stuff, we're gonna do dinners. We're gonna do our bourbon tasting every year, and we try to at least make this a little bit of fun, because I've worked at firms that hasn't been as fun, it makes working hard a lot harder.
Yeah, I do want to talk about that bourbon tasting in a minute. So put a pin in that. I missed it this year. I've missed it the last couple of years. But so back to James. So James started the firm with you. He's moved on. At one time, I had this vague memory. Did he move to California and he was working there?
He did. He went to UCLA Law. He was barred out in California. He actually was doing some work out in California. He loved it out there. He met his wife out there, brought her to Atlanta, and they always wanted to go back. And so they moved. He moved to San Diego. He wanted to try to do a bi-coastal thing. I just was really worried about that and thought it might be better that he kind of do his own thing over there and I'll go solo. And the plan was for me to go solo here. And then Michael Kaplan over at Kaplan Cobb connected one of his buddies, Jonathan Palmer, with me because his firm, Dr. Miles Shields, all of the partners were retiring. And so he was in a spot similar to mine, kind of in flux. And so we had some commonalities with work in terms of his commercial litigation practice. But then he brought on class action and insurance coverage, which is always great to have those extra practices. But then he also liked golf, liked bourbon, and the rest is history.
I can't remember. When did you start the bourbon tastings? Was it
bourbon
after
tasting was with James? It was 1 year out.
Okay.
So 2012, first one was Druid Hills Golf Club, and we've been doing it ever since.
Damn. So you've been doing it, almost 15 years now?
Almost,
Wow.
yeah.
We're about to be the 15. Is next year 15?
Coming up, yeah.
You got to blow it out. It's got to be
I know. I said that. We've got that class action settlement. Hopefully, if that comes through, it'll be a straight Pappy line of bourbons.
Yeah. You'll get them to make one for you, custom for the tasting. So Jonathan came on in 2019. He brings class action. So how was that bringing in? I mean, that's a completely different practice area than what you were doing. I mean,
correct. And so
action.
I always tell people I'm getting base hits. I'm an hourly guy. I'm just plugging away. Palmer brings in both the whistleblower stuff and the class actions, pure contingency. Us paying the expenses, taking a lot of risk. Palmer's hit on 2 here that did not involve me, but this last one where we sued all the real estate agents, I was involved in that. But that was a big risk, but I kind of liked it because I kind of had my practice set with the hourly stuff, taking care of most of the expenses and all that, and having a couple kind of home runs lingering out there was a lot of fun for me.
So how did you and Jonathan integrate the 2 style of practices? I've seen a lot of firms where they have an hourly piece and a contingency piece, and it can get a little challenging of how you integrate, especially with how you use. I mean, obviously you advance expenses, but using other resources, people and whatnot around the firm, and when it hits and when it doesn't, and the peaks and valleys. How have you guys managed it?
The way that we manage it, we started it out, and because we were unsure kind of how things were going to work out, we really started as expense sharing partners. And so really it was just kind of, each one kind of pay their expenses. I have certain lawyers that work for me. I take care of their expenses. We have some shared overhead expenses with staff and rent and that sort of thing. And then when these cases came in, what we kind of agreed on was, look, I'll come in with my hours. I'll bring in, an associate or 2, and then we'll kind of split whatever comes in. And so it's kind of worked out. But it's also kind of just trusting your partner. I hate to say it. Everyone wants everything in writing, but at the end of the day, if one gets a little out of whack, then we'll make adjustments. And we've kind of done that throughout the course of our partnership.
And class actions are a little weird too in terms of contingency, because you got to get approved, and then maybe there's a committee, and then is this political there, getting on the committee, and then you have to have the judge approve the fee and all this stuff. How's that part been?
Well, luckily we opposed there was a motion to have all of these cases consolidated into the MDLs, the multi-district litigation cases. Luckily, we've avoided those, and so we have not had to deal with that. And so we have been our own committee. We were able to negotiate all these individually. We had to go move for class settlement approval from the Northern District, and you've got all sorts of parties coming in and fighting that. But other than that, we haven't had to deal with the committees yet. That happens more usually on the product side or personal injury side. We're only doing consumer class actions.
The other cool thing, I'm curious, don't give your secrets, but finding the claim, like discovering the claim. And you mentioned this new one with the real estate agents, and with your real estate background, how did you guys discover it?
So it was sitting, with one of my buddies from high school who was a Keller Williams agent, and him complaining about this. He's just like, man, I've got a seller, who wants to sell a home, and he doesn't want to pay the buyer side commission. And I had to tell him, I was like, look, this is just the way it is. And he said, well, listen, if you go over to Century 21 or Remax, they're going to tell you the same thing. It's just the way it is. And so that's when I went and kind of researched it, why it was that way, and realized the National Association of Realtors, who control the MLS systems in every state, in order to be a part of the MLS, these real estate agents and brokerages have to join the National Association of Realtors. And that's one of their written stipulations, is for the seller to pay buyer side commissions, which is antitrust. And so immediately when I found that out, I said, all right, this is an antitrust case. We're equipped to do it. We each had some experience doing it. We filed the suit and settled it, and we got a settlement approval for $55 million.
Very nice, man.
It's up in appeal, 11th Circuit, but hopefully we're not too worried about the appeal.
Whittle that down a little bit on you. But so was this national or just in the state of Georgia?
It was a national class action.
But filed in Northern District?
Correct. Judge Cohen approved the settlement.
Very nice, man. You got any others in the cooker?
We do. We've gotten into these tax appeal cases, and so we've got one in Fulton County against the Fulton County tax assessor, where back in kind of around COVID time, they got lazy or didn't have appraisers that could go to properties and appraise, so they just used the previous sales price for the house as the appraisal value, and that's called sales chasing, and it's unconstitutional. Constitution in Georgia requires each property to be separately appraised. And so your firm is on the other side. Covenant Horse is representing the city of Atlanta.
My old firm.
Old firm. Your old firm is representing the city of Atlanta. And so we've gotten class certification on that case, and now we're kind of moving forward with fact discovery. Then we got another case in DeKalb County under a different kind of tax issue, but it's based on the 2-year freeze period that commercial properties get. So like Stonecrest Mall is one of the big class representatives, and they appealed their taxes, supposed to get 2 years of freeze. They didn't get it. They were sent a tax bill, paid it on accident, not knowing, and almost a ton of commercial properties in DeKalb County had the same thing happen to them. So that one alone is probably $150 million class action. The Fulton County one is about $100 million.
Wow.
So,
well, let me ask this: if these class actions start gaining traction, you're going to give up the hourly practice?
The hourly practice, I still enjoy going to trial, but I think we might get a little pickier and choosier on some of the hourly stuff.
So let me ask you this. I'm curious, as somebody who tries complex business cases, they're very different, and I've asked some folks this, but I'll just call it like a car wreck or a typical plaintiff kind of case. They're pretty short. You've got witnesses, and you can do it in a day and a half, maybe 3 days tops. With these business cases, they're more complex. There's usually a buttload of documents. The jury's over there probably falling asleep. How do you, Bryan, keep them entertained and keep them interested when you're having to put these documents and take them through these sometimes boring and methodical, spreadsheets or whatever?
Well, let's take this last trial. So last trial, we're Power Systems, a generator company. They sell these $1 million generators that power, whole hospitals and that sort of thing. They brought their corporate representative down from headquarters in Wisconsin. And to keep the jury kind of entertained, I know the answers to a lot of the questions I'm going to ask because of depositions. But one of the big issues is that they said that the building was defective, not the generator. But for a year and a half, there was no writing in there. They were sending people out doing warranty work and trying to fix it. They just could never find the problem. It was a lemon, but I couldn't say that from a motion in limine standpoint, but it was. And so for the jury, I would bring up these issues and I'd look at him and I'd say, let me guess. There's nothing in writing, is there? He says, no. Let me guess. You had a phone call. And then let me guess. You didn't know who was on the other line of that phone call. And he was, yes, yes, yes. Jury's kind of chuckling. And for documents that are important, I'd walk up, put them up there and kind of go through the document with them. So I try to be a little more engaging. But one of the best ones was this guy tried to say that he's on this elite team of resolution managers called the escalation team for Generac. And he said it was for rapid response. And so I said, so you're kind of like SEAL Team 6. And he said, yeah, kind of like SEAL Team 6. I was like, so your rapid response, this claim starts in 2019. You don't even send somebody out to 2021. If you were SEAL Team 6, people would die. And no objection from their side. The jury's laughing, and so I try to do stuff like that to keep them entertained because they are boring. There's a lot of documents, but if I can add a little humor or light to it without being condescending, I try to.
So did you go to law school wanting to be a trial lawyer, or is that something you
discovered? I went to law school not knowing what law is now that I look back on it. I thought it was something completely different, but it was more of a trial aspect to it. This is embarrassing, but it was Tom Cruise from A Few Good Men. I was like, I want to be that guy. But really, before law school, I did 2 years of medical sales, selling medical equipment. And I think that experience today has probably helped me the most in business development and kind of my normal practice. Obviously, the law stuff is different, but the business side, those 2 years of sales, doing just cold calls or walking into businesses, that kind of stuff has helped me out a lot with the business development side.
So what are your go-to? How did you build your practice? I mean, if I'm a young lawyer starting out, I say, Bryan, you've built this great firm, this great practice, and it sounds like from a pretty early age, or in terms of law school or lawyer, you developed a book of business pretty young. So what would you tell people?
I would tell people it's if you're in business litigation, it's mostly all lawyer referrals. It's different for different practices. Family and personal injury kind of have their own, but for business litigation, decent referrals are going to come from other lawyers. So what I was doing early on was doing lunches. The lunches have kind of gone by the wayside these days, but like the lunches were critical. Doing anywhere where I can meet other lawyers. So I was focusing on the young lawyers, bar stuff. I was taking other associates, like opposing counsels, meeting them for drinks. That's back when, before you're married, you have more time, or just kind of hanging out with other lawyers. But I also did one of those business to business kind of networking groups where we met other people. But doing that as a young lawyer was important just to get your name out there. But also, I think as a young lawyer, taking ownership and being like, I'm the man, even though you might not be. It's maybe a little smoke and mirrors, but let them think you are, rather than saying my firm and my law my partner can help, and not say I can help. I'm going to do it, and run with those clients and actually run with them. That I think that helped me out the most, because it wasn't like you were going to get a referral and then I was going to bring somebody else in to help, and that might naturally happen, but I wanted to be the man.
I'm with you. I agree. Over the years, and I went out there pretty young doing all the stuff. And, the first thing is it's hard to develop practice, business litigation practice, I think, because you've got to reconstitute it every year. It's one-offs. It's just a bunch of one-offs. So you just really got to get out there. The other thing that over the years I've heard a lot of associates say, well, if I was a partner, it'd be a lot easier. And I just don't agree with that at all. I mean, maybe it's a little easier, maybe, but that's not stopping you. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. It's not so much the title, it's how you act. It's how much confidence that you're going to bring to it, or instill confidence in people to give you a referral. Say, hey, listen, if I give a referral to this guy, is he going to be able to handle it? So when I meet people, just like you and I have had this conversation, I'm going to talk about stuff that I've done, and cases that I work on, and so that people can start thinking about you as a good lawyer or an expert in a field. And so that's what I always typically try to do. It's not just, hey, Jonathan, hey, I'm Bryan, I'm a lawyer here. It's, let me hear about your practice, first. You don't want to start talking about yourself first. Let me hear about your practice. Oh, well, now let me tell you about my practice, and go through and talk about things that I think you and I might have synergies on. Because if you're a corporate lawyer, I know that immediately, find out what kind of operating agreements you're drafting, and I try to figure out those synergies. Is it from a non-compete standpoint, trade secrets? Where is it where I can figure that out? And guess what? I do a lot of that stuff, and I'm the best.
Hell yeah. I love that. The other thing, too, that a lot of younger lawyers, I mean, I get it. They're busy. They have billable hour requirements, et cetera, but you got to get up from behind your desk and get the hell out there. You got to go out in the world, right?
Yeah. 100%. I mean, and there's nothing stopping you from doing that. And I think that's where you learn that you have the most freedom, when you become a producer, and you've got your own clients, you have freedom. Freedom from law firms, you can move law firms, you can do your own thing, but that's where you have your freedom. But if you're sitting there billing away, that's a whole nother model, but you're going to be tied to the desk.
Real quick, if you haven't gotten a copy yet, please check out my book, The Law Firm Lifecycle. It's written for law firm owners and those who plan to be owners. In the book, I discuss various issues that come up as a law firm progresses through the stages of its growth, from just before starting a firm to when it comes to an end. The Law Firm Lifecycle is available on Amazon. Now back to the show. Now, we've talked about that bourbon tasting a little bit, so take me back. What led to the creation of that? I think it's a great event. It's probably gotten bigger every year. I guess you got to limit how many people you invite, but great event. What led to it, and how has it grown over the years, and how has it maybe helped solidify relationships or form new ones?
People like you, coming back every year, the list has gotten bigger, but we just wanted a signature event that was ours, that was different, that had a theme, and that people knew that when they come back, it'd be a good time. But it's grown, and we've got judges there now, and we've got we like to invite opposing counsel after cases are over. That's one of our things, is we can fight hard, but still be cordial and professional, and maybe even friends afterwards. And that's always the highest compliment that I get when I get a referral from opposing counsel. So we try to keep that as lighthearted as possible. And seeing clients, seeing opposing counsel outside of work, I think is always fun to do. But we just wanted a signature event, and that's kind of how it started.
Well, great event, man. That's a good one. So another thing you do a lot of, I see you and your firm out there a lot of, and that's sponsor these judicial campaign events. I mean, you do a ton of those. How did you get into that? Why did you? I mean, I think I know why, because you're trying cases, but tell me about that.
I mean, really, it kind of started with I think it was way back. I mean, I'm trying to think of who the first judge was, but I saw David Flint do that. David Flint did that, Shreveport Flint, really well, and it just kind of stemmed from that. Is if I can help keep judges that I like, that I think do a good job, that's more of the reason and things behind it, rather than just getting to know the judge. Obviously, it doesn't hurt, but the good judges, that should really come into play. They should be calling balls and strikes. But coming in, having that ability to help out. And what I liked was, we're not a big firm, but I've got 20 other people that are in my situation that I know, and I can bring together for an event, and each of my events usually turns out, we usually make $25,000, $30,000 for a judge, and their typical event, they're hoping to get 5 to 10, and so it turns out to be, just from the numbers, a pretty decent event. We'll have it at fun places, and it's just another way to network, but in a different way.
And you mentioned it, but good judges, which we all know, you do this long enough, there's some judges that frankly should not be on the bench for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah. I agree with you, and that's kind of the importance of it. It's just kind of helping out good judges. I'm not gonna put my name on a judge that I don't think does a good job.
Yeah. All right, let's switch back to the firm. I want to talk about the challenges you've faced over the years, growing your firm. I'm sure you've had some, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back kind of things. As you look back now, what is it? We're looking at 2011 to 26. What is that? 15 years or so. What are some of the big challenges you've faced over the years?
The biggest one is hiring. It's been difficult. We don't have a lot of turnover, but it's more of just finding the right kind of person. But then strategy. Am I going to get laterals? Am I going to go straight from law school? Do I go after an equity partner to kind of come in? And we've talked to people. We've talked to equity partners about coming in, but then we're worried about losing, our core values and losing what we have. That's been a struggle for us. It's like, where are we going with this law firm? Is it we're on a trajectory? Definitely we've got room to grow, but how big's big enough? And how much money is enough money? And so that's kind of where we're at. And so we've started taking less cases, but bigger cases. That's been a challenge. I don't know about you, but when I first started, probably the first 10 years, I was always worried about running out of business. And it scared me. And I think it prevented me from growing a little bit those first years. But now it hasn't been a problem. It's almost like the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. And we've been lucky enough to have that opportunity. And so right now we're in kind of a growth mode. Our office is full. We've got one lawyer working from home, which she lives 40 minutes away, but it's a good fit. But there's this next big obstacle of where we want this to go. What kind of space do we need? And it's all exciting, but a little scary at the same time.
So you mentioned opportunities. The other thing that people will find, I found it, I'm sure you've seen it, when you own your own firm, especially when you go out early, all these new opportunities, you just get these opportunities, and not all of them are a good fit. And I'm sure, you've always been a litigation boutique. I'm sure you've had the opportunity to add some transactional component to your firm. I'm sure.
100%. I thought that the only way to do it, you were at Fultz Martin. I thought the only way to do it was Streeter, Blair, and Flint. They had their corporate side, they had their real estate, transactional side, and they had litigation, and it all you did everything for all the companies, and I just realized that I wanted to do what we do well, and we are not equipped to do that, and I'm not equipped to kind of oversee that, and it was just, I think we were spreading ourselves thin, losing our identity. So I wanted to really just kind of more for branding, to stick with what we do well.
My experience too over the years, I was always, before I started my firm, was that I'd call it a business boutique. We did litigation and real estate and corporate stuff at both firms. Great firms, good lawyers, but I always felt as a business litigator back in the old days, it was a little more challenging to get referrals. If there's a corporate lawyer out there at a corporate boutique, even if I promised I won't steal the client, and even if they believe me and they said yes, they would still think, well, if you get a corporate client, you're going to send it down the hall instead of bring it back to me. So I found it was challenging being at those firms to try to get work. I don't know. I think when you're in a boutique, it just seems like it might be a little easier. I don't know. You got any thoughts on that?
I agree. I mean, in terms of that's who I network. I network with corporate lawyers who are kind of on their own or don't do litigation, real estate lawyers who don't do litigation. Those are my best referral sources because it's usually a two-way street. It's doing something that the other doesn't do. So with that respect, then yes. But then also just from the specialization, that everyone knows you to kind of specialize in these areas. And you're not just like a small town lawyer who does a little bit of everything. You got the specialization. So I would definitely agree with that.
So you're at about 10 lawyers now, you said?
Just hire a 10th. He's taking the bar in July and will start with us in September. Yeah.
So the other thing that I saw over the years at my 2 prior firms, when I joined, I think both of those firms, we were around 12 lawyers. And we would bump around 11 to 14, and we bumped around for a while, and then this critical mass effect took hold, and then all of a sudden we jumped into the 20s pretty quickly. So you're bouncing around, and then boom. I'm wondering if you're around that stage, and then the question is, do you want that, and are you open to that, and what do you think? What's going to happen next?
All the mentors and people that I've talked to over the years have said, just wait, 50 is when you really start to peak. You get a little of the gray hair, you get a little street cred, but I'm 48. So if that's 2 years from now, maybe you're right. But I'm not a numbers guy, but I want it to be, if the growth is there and we can continue to provide great service, continue to still be a great trial boutique, then yes, let's grow. But numbers don't really matter to me. It's more the planning. It's like, what size office do I need? That's kind of what I'm thinking about, because those are just the questions that I'm still working on right now. But I do know that numbers that I like are somewhere between 15 and 20, and the reason being is when I talk to general counsels, they want you at those numbers, to make sure that you can handle all of their work. And so right now, kind of like you said, a lot of my work is kind of one-off, but we've got a couple of larger clients that we're doing continuous steady work for, but they're still worried of flooding us, And so that's always a concern. Once you start making that next leap, which is kind of my next goal, is to start getting some more reoccurring, larger companies to have reoccurring business.
So that's a great point. There's a lot of people out there that, they ask the question, should I grow? Why should I grow? And I think you just raised a really good strategic reason to grow. There's a lot of reasons, like, don't just grow just to grow. But if being a little bigger means you can get the bigger cases or bigger clients that you really want to go after, then yeah, you got to do it. But if you're just growing just to grow, you're just going to sort of get whipped up on the seas and not really know where you're going.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's where Jonathan and I are really trying to talk strategy and think about that for sure. But that would be a great reason. But right now we've got cases that definitely have a lot of room for movement, and so we definitely got that there. But this 10th lawyer, we'll bring on, and we're going to do the summer program and actually start trying to do what you and I grew up doing. We're part of is go after these top level law students and start putting some more money into the recruiting side.
Nice, man. You're growing up. You're
I know.
Becoming a real firm.
I know.
So as you look forward, it sounds like you've thought strategy. I think you sort of know where you're going. You're not a numbers necessarily just for numbers' sake kind of guy, but as you look forward the next 10 years or so, where would you like to take it? Stay in Atlanta, go other places?
Yeah, no, definitely stay in Atlanta. But would definitely like to be more class action work. Maybe some more. See, business litigation is so hard in the contingency side, but class action whistleblower, that makes more sense for us. But I'd like to be at that kind of 10 years from now at that 20 law firm, 20 attorney number. I'd like to have a succession plan in place, because I'm not one of these guys that are going to die at my desk, working. But I'd like to be able to still have my foot in there, but have that as these guys that are working for me now ready to take the reins and kind of have that set up here in the next 5 years or so.
Yeah, it's a challenge, man. The succession planning, it's a challenge, and it's good to be thinking about it now, because if you wait too late, it's sort of too late.
Well, then you're right, and I don't want to be too old where they say you're just bringing these guys in because you have to. But I want to bring it in early with some of these bigger clients and get them used to this, but also show them kind of how to run a firm and also how to bring in business. That's the unknown, is the bringing in business side, for a lot of these younger lawyers. But trying to teach them how to do that. Hopefully we'll get that kind of worked out.
So also as part of growth, and we've talked a little about it, you want sort of the seasoned lawyers or the brand new lawyers. Let's talk about more of the seasoned lawyers.
Sure.
What do you do for recruiting? I think, how do you find the lawyers you want, and then how do you recruit them and convince them, hey, this is a place you should come?
We are naturally very bad at recruiting. We understand that that's one of our weaknesses. I've been lucky enough because of the attorney network that I have. That's kind of how I'm doing my recruiting, is really just kind of like reaching out to people. Hey, we're looking for this, looking for lawyers. But now I'm getting hit up with everyone's kind of looking for lawyers, I feel like, but it's not so much the new lawyers, but everyone wants that kind of someone older than, more than 3 years, but hasn't been entrenched totally with, what wants to be partner. It's kind of this, I think everybody wants that right now. But in terms of recruiting, it's really just kind of word of mouth. And that's what's made me successful and how I've gotten most of my business. But I need to be open to, more ideas with both marketing and recruiting. Those are two of our weaknesses for sure.
Recruiting's tough. I mean, for me, it really is. And it's almost like business development. It seems like you just got to be in front of people all the time and remind them, hey, I'm here. But also, hey, we're open. Because if you, let's say an event happens wherever they are and they hadn't seen you in a while, they may forget that, hey, this is an option. So it's like you just got to be out there letting them know.
Yeah, in the recruiter side of it, I'm open to it. I haven't used a recruiter. I've gotten really lucky, I think, with some of our hires. That most people have been here for a long time. We've gotten lucky, but I'm also scared of the mercenaries that just kind of firm hop. Like I'm not looking for that.
Maybe it's wrong, but that is a huge red flag for me. If it's every 2 years, that's you're renting a player. It's like NIL. It's like NIL nowadays, right?
Exactly. Come and go. Go to the next bidder.
Yeah. You're a Clemson fan, right?
I am Clemson.
And they had a good stretch there, but NIL, it's harder,
No,
right?
I know. Well, you're a UGA guy, right?
Well, no, I'm a Georgia Tech guy, actually.
You Tech undergrad.
Yeah.
But, well, at least UGA, they didn't win any. I mean, they got the 80 championship, but they had a drought until you could legalize cheating, and then they're like 2 national championships. We're like, oh, we can do this out in the open now. Oh, this is great.
Oh, man, you're out here. You're drunk at a bar picking a fight, man. You ever watch that?
I am.
Yeah, football's coming up, man. It's gonna be fun. So, all right, man. What have we not touched on here? So, yeah, what do you do for fun? I mean, we've talked about a lot of the stuff you do. In terms of working, you work hard, you try cases. What kind of stuff do you do for fun and unwind?
I'd say for fun. My kids are really big into soccer, which I was too growing up, and so I've got 2 girls that play in travel soccer. My son's starting it up, so I think that's fun going to that. And they also do AE basketball, which I did, so that's all fun for me. But play a lot of golf, and so played Saturday for Father's Day, and play some golf here and there, and then travel. So we're actually leaving for Italy for 2 weeks on Thursday with the kids, and we'll go take them and travel around, and hopefully eat some good food and enjoy ourselves on the beach a little bit.
Very nice. Have you gone to any World Cup games?
Yeah, we went to the Czechia South Africa game, but I was actually in trial, so I couldn't go. I had a friend from college going, but I sent my family instead of me.
Oh man!
Trial on Thursday.
What'd they say?
They said it was a blast. They said it was cool. They just liked seeing all the countries, kind of being into it. Fan fest beforehand was pretty cool. Have you been to any games yet?
I have not. I'm not a huge soccer guy.
Okay.
I mean, I watch a little bit on TV, but it's.
All right. Well, USA, man, they're going to be going at it coming up. I guess they don't have to win this game, but it's fun. It's fun to watch them.
So you mentioned earlier, before law school, you were in sales. If you were not a lawyer, what would you be doing now?
Man, it's funny you asked me at this point. After I've kind of put some money in the bank, but I would probably be, if I wasn't back. You talked to me, you asked this question back, 20 years ago, before law school or so, I'd probably say I'd stay in medical device sales because I made pretty good money, doing all that. I actually paid for my first 2 years of law school awake. But now I think I would be a builder. And because I represent so many builders, I've represented Pulte homes in the past, I feel like I know, at least from the risk standpoint, I know where the problems go wrong, contracts, that kind of stuff. And I think I would enjoy kind of the general contracting aspect and having subs and doing that kind of work. But then the real estate development side of it, on the smaller end, I think I would actually really enjoy that.
Have you dabbled?
I have, very, very small amounts, but never on the building side. But I have lots of real estate here and there, which I've enjoyed.
Well, I imagine just from some of your clients, you have opportunities to invest here and there, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. I've gotten involved in a fund and, done a lot of that stuff.
All right. For the younger lawyers out there that are thinking about starting a firm or maybe have started a firm, what advice would you give to them?
I would say do it. And I would say for everything that you're worried about, focus on the upside. Because for some reason, all those things I worried about never came to fruition. Worrying about not having enough cases, worrying about not being able to pay the bills. That fear keeps most people from not making the jump. And every lawyer I've talked to that's gone on their own, I've never heard of one failing and going back and working at a big firm. I mean, you tell me, you work with them all the time. I mean, am I wrong? I feel like most all make it.
Now, there's some that get sick of the administrative stuff and they're just like, I don't want to do that anymore. But they're usually very busy and they just don't want to they just want to actually just practice law. So other than that, most people tell me I wish I'd done it earlier.
Always. And that fear kind of paralyzes people, but especially when you get the golden handcuffs, when you get kids, you got them in private school, you do that. The earlier you do it, like I did, you got no risk. You can always go back.
So true. You wait too long, it's too risky, or at least it feels too risky. One thing you mentioned about the fear, you mentioned earlier too, I sort of like to maintain a little bit of fear. If I'm too content, then I just start to get soft and lazy. I always need, and if I don't have fear, I need to manufacture some. I don't know. It's like to make me say, all right, I got to go do some more stuff.
That's actually a good point, because where the fear comes from me every time? Hiring a new lawyer. And be like, all right, I got to make sure they got 1,800 hours. And so then it's like, all right, I need to get back out there. So having that little bit of growth, or actually just analyzing the financials a little closer, like, wow, there's a lot of money going out, gives me that little fear every once in a while and gets me back focused on bringing in some more business.
So you mentioned that about hiring a new lawyer. I'm curious your approach. Is it a build it and they will come, or do you wait till you're super, super overloaded to hire that next lawyer?
I should build it, do what you first said. Build it and they will come. I always end up doing the opposite and just overloaded and reactive rather than being proactive. And it's one of those things where if I were to tell a new lawyer, I'd tell them to be proactive, but I get how hard it is to do that without the work being there.
It's tough, man. It is tough. And recently I had 2 attorneys leave, basically back to back. And we're not a huge firm. And it was a big, we're slowly recovering. We've got people coming in. We're filling the bench back up. But man, it just overloads. And then that's another benefit of being a little bit bigger. If 1 or 2 leave, you got a bigger bench to help fill in.
Well, let me give you an example. We just had one of our associates, she had to take medical leave from June 5th to July 20th. Not that long, right? But it was serious surgery. But that means I couldn't give her any new cases coming in. And all of her current cases, I had to make sure that they were taken care of, which has now overloaded the firm. Like, one person going down for 6 weeks has really created kind of wreaked havoc, which has kind of shown me that really we're too stressed right now. We probably need another two, maybe 3 lawyers.
And that's the thing for those out there building, especially when you look at all these firms out there, and they're just like, oh, they got it made. They've got it figured out. They know exactly what's going on. It's like that duck on the water, underneath. There's just so much shit going on. You don't know about until you're in it. And usually when you think it's all great, that's when the shit's about to hit the fan, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. But there's also no one way to do it, And I know there's models, people have used some and been more successful, but I mean, there's no certain way to do it. And I think that that's one thing that will help younger lawyers start this. It's okay to go into it and not know what the hell you're doing. As long as you're doing good law practice and getting the bills out and getting them paid, things will work themselves out.
Well, Bryan, let's end on that, man. Things are going to work themselves out. So thanks for coming on. For people out there that want to get in touch with you, maybe they got a case to refer you, class action idea, or maybe they're looking to make a move. What's the best way to find you?
Best way to find me, probably our website, www.knightpalmerlaw.com. Shoot me an email. My email's on there. Would love to talk.
Sweet. I'll see you at the Bourbon tasting. Well, I'll see you before then, I'm sure. But thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Founding Partner Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on the latest episodes. You can also connect with Jonathan on LinkedIn and check out the show notes with links to resources mentioned throughout our discussion by visiting www.lawfirmgc.com. We'll see you next time for more origin stories and insights from successful law firm founders.